Odds are, if you clicked on this video, you want to watch someone talk about the movies and the shorts that were part of the first phase of the MCU. Well, 2 weeks ago, we released a whole video breaking down what the whole franchise means to us on a more abstract level and a little more holistically, and in a few weeks we're going to be doing the same thing with classic Doctor Who's First Doctor. For this video, though, we took all the notes and reviews of the movies and shorts that we watched for this whole project, so I guess I would make it a series of really short reviews of all of the Marvel and MCU projects that were part of the first phase. For this watch through, even though I have the whole phase on Blu-ray, it was just more convenient to put it on through Disney+, and this is also a way we can show our active support for the franchise.
2008's Iron Man. Iron Man still has a lot of metaphorical lifting to do. It is a pretty sure bet that if Iron Man had flopped, both motion pictures and comic books would be entirely different industries today. It starts with a twat waffle of a human being that is our protagonist having a personal awakening, and I am confident the largest portion of his fanbase does not understand that whatsoever. After his own bomb literally blows up in his face and he learns that warmongering is bad, so he makes a $1 billion suit of armor to blow up the people who blew him up. Luckily, for the sake of our sympathy, they were doing really bad stuff at the time. Then has to deal with the fallout of changing the direction of a multi-billion-dollar company. Iron Man follows all the superhero tropes you might expect, with the exception that our character's major arc is learning to be a better person and learning how to undo the wrongs that he and his family has done in the past, while looking absolutely cool and quipping every step of the way, thanks to one of the best cast leads during the turn of the century. You might see nearly every one of Iron Man's story beats coming from a mile away, but they're all executed pretty much exactly as intended and work really well.
2008's The Incredible Hulk from the MCU. So what does everybody think about the largely inconsequential deleted opening where our lead tries to off himself and we get a frozen Captain America cameo? Like, does anybody actually care about that? Or is it just me? I continue to wonder how Marvel convinced the US military to contribute so much to this production and make them look so completely incompetent and immoral throughout the production without being called out for it somehow. As we follow a scientist the military is hunting because he took some radiation steroids, and now when he gets angry he beats up armies single-handedly. It's about our lead's search for a cure to this curse, through which the plot really leans into the characters and their dynamics, as we are both constantly moving towards the movie's end goal and running away from pursuers. Makes for a lot of good constant action and movement. While I have never particularly loved either lead's performances, I would hardly call either of them poor, maybe just a little breathless to me. The action sequences continue to be really well choreographed and intense, with real weight brought to the fight sequences between two tall CGI chads. I would also argue the soundtrack does let the movie down at a few moments, but I also think that is a generalized MCU problem and not specific to The Incredible Hulk, and I don't want to focus on that either. I think there's a whole lot this movie does really well.
2010's Iron Man 2. Here where we watch Tony Stark deal with his mortality with alcohol and super science while a Russian dude with the board smacks around whips in the background. Out of all the things the MCU has or has not done in recent years that is conceived as bad or good, at least they did not try to brush over alcoholism with something as simple as, he needs to do a science. And when the action that is balancing out that lack of substance is as short as it is on top, this remains one of the bigger nothing movies for me in the MCU's catalog. I'm sorry. I think the movie does a pretty good job at incorporating the wider world of the Marvel Universe without getting lost in the lore and fan service. I think Sam Rockwell's Justin Hammer is also a really fun contrast to Tony Stark. I hope many people find joy in Iron Man 2, but it continues to just not vibe on a personal level here.
2011's Thor. Ah yes, the MCU movie directed by Hercule Poirot himself. After being banished from his utopian planet for wanting to start a war, Thor finds himself in a small contemporary town with his hammer somewhere in the distance, being particularly stubborn, putzing around with a handful of underutilized actors until Loki schemes himself into oblivion back on Asgard. Thor is unique in its action, and its stakes are completely separated from one another. Thor is essentially saving his entire people, but it feels like he's just protecting a small town millions of light years away and learning about responsibility. It makes for an odd juxtaposition that it feels like a lot of audiences did not appreciate. This does continue to be an excellent introduction to the character, portrayed by a great cast. While the action may be a little forward-heavy in the runtime, it has strong themes that permeate through the picture that have always kind of hit for me, and I like Thor a lot. First MCU movie I saw opening day, by the way.
Marvel one-shot, The Consultant. Marvel legend Agent Coulson is having a conversation with another agent that leads to the post-credit scene in The Incredible Hulk. I mean, this mostly feels like it was meant to be part of a post-credit scene but was cut for time, and I don't mind that at all. It's short, quick, witty, and fun. 2011's Captain America, The First Avenger. I know we are getting a little mini-series about Captain America returning the Infinity Stones. I would have rather us have gotten a little Howling Commando mini-series that takes place during the montage of The First Avenger instead. Speed running the first few years of his story to create a self-contained origin story, we follow an itty-bitty guy with a huge heart, Steve Rogers, during the Second World War, be selected for a medical enhancement we get one shot at. Luckily for us it works, and now we have an hour left of Nazi punching catharsis. For a long time, I was let down by this movie and I couldn't figure out why. This was my first watch where I felt like I really got into the picture. You can easily make a Saving Private Ryan plus Captain America. It would have been probably amazing, but it would have lost a lot of the earnestness that comes by rounding off the edges of a movie like this. I still never have been a big fan of Chris Evans' deep voice coming out of Itty Bitty Steve, but that is also a dumb complaint that I completely forget about as soon as he gets his roids. Also, I think David Bradley's 2 minutes in the opening scene might be the largest waste of an actor in all of the MCU. Marvel's one-shot, a funny thing happened on the way to Thor's hammer. I really enjoy these one-shots, this one included. It's just Agent Coulson ruining the day of a few robbers and moving on. It's short, it kicks ass, it's fun. 2012's The Avengers. What should be the cap to the first phase of the MCU, The Avengers brings everyone from the previous movies together when the big bad guy from Thor shows up with a mind control stick and an alien army to ruin Nick Fury's day. The real culmination of the first phase of the MCU did have a lot relying on it. It had to both stand on its own as a finale as well as lead into the next phase. They had to reintroduce audiences who may not have watched all the previous installments to characters and MacGuffins and story elements, while also just being fun and action-packed on its own. After 12 years, what stands out more than anything is that main cast of core Avengers plus Nick Fury. I think they bounce off of each other extremely well. So Sarah Haley Finn, the overall casting director, the MCU's first phase, should absolutely be praised for leading all these casts and putting them together. The cast's energy turn what feels like a pretty standard script and direction and bring real energy to the picture. This does very much still have a purpose in the larger empire that Marvel has become in the box office. Marvel one-shot, item 47 from 2012. So Coulson's right-hand man, Agent Sidwell, gets a moment to shine, hunting down a couple with confiscated alien tech from the Battle of New York from, the Avengers. With the revelations that come later, I don't entirely understand what the point of this one-shot is. While the previous two felt like either bonus material or a little pitch for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., nothing of consequence comes from this short except for the missed potential that Sidwell could have brought to the late MCU. At the Prime Theaters, an MCU complete retrospective. I always like to hunt down a few fan retrospectives and YouTube series or videos to highlight here. There were way less than I was expecting for a property as big as the MCU, but I suppose it was not quite as old as a lot of the franchises you normally see those kind of videos from. The Prime Theaters video drew me in because of how clean and simple it was in its breaking down of the MCU phases, not dissimilar from how I'm going to be doing here. This was the first video of his that I have seen at all, but he has a pretty big following and seems to be pretty consistent and on point with his criticisms of the franchise, while his praise is fairly well researched for the video. It's a great supplement if you were doing a big marathon like I did. Again, thank you so much for sitting with us through our marathon of the MCU's first phase. I would be lying if I didn't admit to have some nostalgia for Marvel as a whole, not just the MCU, although that is where I most actively keep up with Marvel currently. I know I mentioned it in the video from about 2 weeks ago, but Hollywood really was waiting for the MCU to fail, and the fact that it became as successful as it did is still, I think, a huge achievement and more of an underdog story than I think a lot of people would admit. Not that being bought out by Disney helped that image much. That's all we really have for this week. Again, classic Doctor Who in a couple of weeks. Other than that, go out, be great, do awesome things. You're great. I love you people. Bye.